Shalom. First and foremost, we want to give all honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahawashi, peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Shalom, brothers and sisters. What we're going to do, we're going to do a little quick lesson over John 10 and just bring some precepts to give you brothers and sisters some understanding of what that John 10 is speaking of, with the parable in which Yahawashi has spoken to the disciples. So I'm going to start off here with John 10. This is John 10 from the top. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the porter openeth, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calleth his own sheep by name, and leadeth them out. And when he put forth his own sheep, he goeth before them, and the sheep follow him. For they know his voice, and a stranger will they not follow, but will flee from him, for they know not the voice of the strangers. This parable spake Yahawashi unto them, but they understood not what things they were which he spake unto them. Then said Yahawashi unto them again, Verily, verily, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep. All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out, and find pasture. Now, the beginning part of that was a parable in which the disciples couldn't understand. And so Yahawashi had to break it down to them later on afterwards. Now, you see where Yahawashi states that he is the door. And then he speaks of a porter. And what we want to do is we want to lock in on that porter piece and see what that porter is pertaining to. Now, porter is basically an old English term that was used, back in Old English, which is why we have it in the scriptures. What we're going to do, we're going to bring out Psalms 84, and it's going to give a little something about the porter.
Psalm 84 verse 10. For a day in thy courts is better than 1,000. I had rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness.
Look at that. So David is stating that he would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of Yahweh rather than to dwell in the house of wickedness. See, now people right now, they see what we're doing as a menial thing, and it's looked down upon. But David is letting us know through the scriptures that he would rather be a doorkeeper rather than to dwell in the midst of stuff like this. You see what I'm saying? Even though the doorkeeper is a menial job, people don't aspire to be, I want to grow up to be a doorkeeper. That's not a great position. But when you start to understand in the scriptures what the doorkeeper is pertaining to, then we can bring it into the spiritual realm so we can have a greater understanding, so we can be like, yeah, I would rather be that doorkeeper as well, or that porter. So what we want to do, we'll go into the history. We'll go to 1 Chronicles 23, 1 through 5. See, in the history of the porters, when you go through the porters, those were brothers who were appointed according to Moses and also through David. And so we're going to bring out a scripture in 1 Chronicles 23, 1 through 5, and it'll kind of explain who the porters were in the old times.
This is 1 Chronicles chapter 23, starting at verse 1. So when David was old and full of days, he made Solomon his son king over Israel. And he gathered together all the princes of Israel with the priests and the Levites. Now the Levites were numbered from the age of 30 years and upward, and their number by their polls, man by man, was 38,000, of which 20 and 4,000 were set forward to work of the houses of Yahweh, and 6,000 were officers and judges. Moreover, 4,000 were porters, and 4,000 praised the Yahweh with the instruments which I made, said David, to praise therewith.
Now, when you go through that history, all of the porters were Levites. Now, the Levites were priests. Now, when you look at the priesthood in this time, that's in the old time, that was the Levitical priesthood. When you look at it in this time, the priesthood would not just be considered the Levites. We would be considered a holy nation of priests. This would be all encapsulating of all tribes together. Now, when you look at the porter, like me and my wife, we got invited into one of her little seminars or whatever, and she had to speak. And when we went into the hotel, there was a man that greeted us there. That was a porter. But the thing was, this dude already knew our names and everything. He knew our names. He opened the door for us and everything. He was already, what do they call it? What do they call it when you abreast of who we were before we even came? They had already told him. And so when we got up there, it's like, hello, Mrs. Stewart. Hello, Mrs. Stewart. You know, your room, blah, 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 blah. So they did all the background stuff on us. Now, when you go into the scriptures, the porters were the keepers of the door, but they would not allow anything unclean into the tabernacle. So when you look at it in this time with the porters of today, they do the same thing. I can't let just any riffraff come into this hotel. So we see how this thing kind of operates in our world and how it also operated in the ancient world and how the similarities were. So they were always doorkeepers, and then they were always watching to make sure there was not the wrong person coming into that particular establishment. Now I'm going to start off here. This is Ezekiel 3 and 16, because watching is part of the porter's duty. Ezekiel 3 and 16. And it came to pass at the end of 7 days that the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore hear the word at my mouth, and give them warning from me. When I say unto the wicked that thou shalt surely die, and thou shalt give him not warning, nor speakest to warn the wicked from his wicked way, to save his life, the same wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thine hand. Yet if thou warn the wicked, and he turn not from his wickedness, nor from his wicked way, he shall die in his iniquity, but thou hast delivered thy soul. So even with that, the porter has to watch. So in this time, we could be considered those porters. We could be people trying to relay the righteous path to get to Yahweh and Yahawashi and say, this is the way. So when you're looking at the elect, that's what they would do. Now, when you look at this in Ezekiel, Ezekiel is an elect brother. This is pertaining unto the election in the last days. They would bring forth that righteous teaching and lead you to Yahawashi, who is that door. That's how you would deal with the porter. Now, let me see. What else?
As a porter, you would be familiar with who came through that door. Because one, that's how this whole gospel is built. It's built on relationships. You'd have to, a brother would learn the gospel, and then he would be introduced to Yahawashi through that door.
There you go. There you go.
You know, and the door is Yahawashi. And it tells you later on in John 10 that he's the great shepherd. You know, so a porter is also one that will be familiar with what's going on in his master's house. You would know what's going on. That's the reason why even in like a lot of our people in the early 20th century, a lot of men gained a lot of knowledge by working as porters. And they would get game from Esau. And that's how the guy that wrote the book, what's that book on race? The big popular one that was written.
I'm not sure.
There's one where it basically goes over to all the old pictures of the Middle Age kingdoms. It has Queen Charlotte on the front of it. It's a very popular book. The guy was
Nature Knows No Color Line.
That guy was a porter. And so as a porter, that's how he gained all that game of where to go for things.
Come on, man.
So he knew what was going on. So a porter is going to be also someone, even though it's a low position, they're going to be knowledgeable and know things. That's why the brother brought up about him and his wife. They knew things about him and his wife and the different things that they needed.
That's
already. So a porter is very important. Although a low position, they're very knowledgeable. But they're not. But they're the ones that help introduce you to get through that.
Exactly. Like brother said, it's not a very highly esteemed position. You know what I'm saying? But like you said, they introduce you to that piece. Now, remember when we went to the history of it, the Levitical priesthood were the only porters in that time. So now, after Yahawashi's death, burial, and resurrection, there was a little change in it. So I'm going to give you Mark 13, starting from 33rd verse. Take ye heed, watch and pray, for ye know not when the time is. For the Son of Man is a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. He commanded the porter to watch. Now remember, it was just the Levitical priesthood back then, so I'm going to keep on going. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, and even at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. So now, when he says state unto all, he wasn't just talking about the Levitical priesthood. He was talking about all the election. The election from each tribe of Israel. Y'all all have to watch. We all have to be porters in this thing, man. It's not just to that priestly line of Levi. It's to the priestly nation of the election. Everybody has to watch. So everybody has that duty, man. So let me see. This is, what is that? Luke 12. I'm going to bring out this Luke 12. Luke 12 and Luke 12 and 30. I'm going to start at the 35th verse. It says, let your loins be girded about and your light burning, and yourselves like unto men that wait for their Lord, when he will return from the wedding, that when he cometh and knocketh, they may open unto him immediately. Blessed are those servants who the Lord, when he cometh, shall find watching. Verily I say unto you, that he shall gird himself and make them to sit down to meat, and will come forth and serve them. And if he shall come in the second watch, or come in the third watch, and find them so, blessed are those servants. And this know, that if the good man of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched, and not suffered his house to be broken through. Be ye therefore ready also, for the Son of Man cometh at an hour when ye think not. So if the porters are watching, they would be ready when Yahawashi comes back. So don't downplay the porter's position, man, because he has a very important part in guiding the people into the way of salvation. This is a quick little lesson on the porter, and I hope you brothers and sisters are edified. We like to give all honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahawashi, peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Shalom.